101 Scout, got that right behind me, the white one, but also rode the Bobber, the Super Scout, the Sport Scout, and also the Classic. But there's a few little things on this bike that, after talking to the engineers, I wanted to point out, so let me show you these things. Right now, I'm in the process of actually rebuilding an Indian Scout Barber 60, so I'm kind of curious on how this bike is really put together. So there's a few little things beyond just it being a new frame, a new engine. They actually, you know, changed some stuff around. So one of the big things right here, if you look under here, this is actually where the wheel speed sensor is mounted now for the front. And also, one of the engineers pointed this out to me. This little thing right here pops out. This is actually where the clutch cable is located now. It used to be on this side, like right in this area, and you can see right there where it actually goes into the clutch rack, into the engine. The radiator right there, right by the horn, that is your radiator reservoir fill. But under the bike, it's kind of hard to see. There's actually a drain for the radiator under there. Now, up here, got rod command, 4-inch screen. If you don't want the rod command, you can go to the analog. But one thing I noticed, these wires, they are hidden really well. I thought that the wire for the GPS was like somewhere in here, because on Chief, the wire goes like here and it goes back. But you can see they tucked it all behind here. There's one 6mm Allen key or Allen bolt that's holding all of this together. Once you lift the tank off, it gives you access to not only these wires as they trace all the way back, but also the radiator fill. So pretty convenient. On the exhaust side, we got this as some have said, over-engineered bracket that's holding this thing. But there's only, let's see, I think one major one right there, and the two at the back that have these little bushings in them, and you can pretty much take this whole thing off. But the cool part about this exhaust, and they thought about this, is previously you had those two cans, one here and one here. You could not really get access to this easily or take off these suspension bolts. But with this big can, I know it's not the prettiest, but you got access to everything without having to even touch this, which is really nice. Right here, another shot of the clutch cable. But once you loosen it up, you get the slack out, or add the slack, you can get this out. And then you get a good shot right here of the new oil window. So there's no dipstick. Take this off right here. I'm sure there is. Yep. Oh, there is. Yep. No, there's no dipstick. Where'd that go? Okay. Yeah. That's where you put your oil in. Put that back. Get it back on there. It's actually really small. It's not that big. I'm gonna tell you one issue people are gonna have with this already. This is so close to the header. Dude, how can I get this? What the heck? I see some people might be in. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that was a little challenging. Some people are gonna touch that header right there, man, and they're gonna burn themselves. But you can see these cooling fins on the exhaust. You got 5 up top and you got 3 on the side to cool this thing. It actually is not that bad. Also, you got 5 up here at the front. Not that bad actually when you ride it for a good amount of distance. These two little buttons right here on Chieftain, for instance, these are for the saddlebags, and I believe heated grips. If I'm not, I don't remember. But anyway, on the Scout, this is for the fog lights and the heated grips if you add that. So once you get those, you just add those buttons there. On this side, this is the new air intake. So the air gets channeled through here, up through here, gets sucked in into the air filter, into the air box, and that is how the engine gets its air. But what's interesting about that is, being that they redesigned it, the gas tank is not actually that much different from the sides, but there is a 0.1 difference in the gas tank. 3.3 previously, now it's 3.4. But that's because when they redesigned this, they were able to get 0.1 more out of the gas tank. But you might think, well, they could have done better. Yeah, you could say that, but here's the thing. They're actually getting 20 miles better of gas because the engine is more efficient, and with that little 0.1, you're getting better fuel economy. So with this package, you get 20 more miles. It's pretty good. On the front end, we got these Brembo brakes. These Brembos are actually from the Challenger, the rotors from the Challenger, the fork tubes are from the FTR, but they've been tuned specifically for Scout, so they're a little different. Got new triples, upper and lower. These triples are different from the other Scout models, the Classic, the Super, the Sport, and the Bobber. So if you want these forks, you're gonna have to get those new triples. Also, the radiator, 22% smaller. With this steel frame, they were able to wedge it in there better. Taking apart my Scout 60, I struggled pretty good to get this radiator out, so that's a welcoming thing, knowing that it is smaller, which means it should be easier. But being that this engine is more efficient, it's kind of cool knowing that they were able to make the radiator smaller, which makes it look like it really just, it's almost like it's not even there. The engine, these head covers, I know some people are not really into the look of these, but what's interesting is these actually come off to reveal the valve covers. I mean, the valves and the tappets, the cams, and all that. But what's cool about it is when these come off, you don't actually have to lower the engine on like the previous Scout. So one of the engineers told me that this bolt can be really hard to get to. Well, if you take the seat off, you can get straight down in there and take that off. So on previous Scouts, the valve adjustment clearances were 30,000 miles, but on this Scout, this new engine, 1250 SpeedPlus, it's been up to 40,000 miles. And they pretty much said that that's more so for a check. It's not really, honestly, the way that they worded it is not really necessary, but they have it in there as a check. They also considered taking it completely out of the manual to have the valves adjusted. So they're not hydraulic, but the check is now 40,000, which is pretty crazy. So I know some people aren't with the look. Like I said, you take these off, check the valves, but what's also interesting is that they did this for future modifications if you need to go in there and change out a cam. Not that they had anything on the books or on the record that, you know, that was, you know, available, but if you needed to change out the cams, you just take these covers off. If you need to check the valves, you can take these covers off without having to lower the engine. That overall makes this bike cheaper to maintain, and I don't think anybody can really argue with that. Coming back here, I asked how easy is it to pull this baffle out. You take these three off, it's just a cover. The baffle is actually welded in there, so you're gonna have to actually cut that out and basically re-weld something else in here. As they said, it is not easy to get this out, and they said basically with the emissions compliance, they said just take this can off, put what you want on there versus trying to modify this. That's pretty much what they said. On the stock Scout, on the previous Scout, you could fit a 240 back here. Being that this is the same swing arm, you can fit a 240 back here. However, with this new subframe back here, this is the same subframe that is on all of the new Scouts. The max you can go before the subframe becomes an issue is 180. So this is a 150 back here now. If you want to widen this out, 180. You want to go 200, you're gonna need a new subframe. So the thing about the subframe is that it allows you to put any of the accessories from the Super Scout, Classic, Bobber, any of that. It can all fit on here. So if you have a 101 and you went, you know what, I want saddlebags from the Super, you can just bolt them up, no problem. Let's get this seat off. Just pull up on it. What's cool about this, key fob's been under the seat. I honestly think that's been part of the issues that we've been having today. Key fob has been blinking all freaking day. But this is actually right here. One of the engineers told me about it. This is a jump post to jump off the battery. Conveniently placed. You put a alligator clip there, move this out of the way, put an alligator clip there, and you can actually jump the bike off. That was built in for that specific reason. Put that back. Also, this is the WCM. This is what the key fob registers against to unlock the bike. This is the antenna for the key fob. Here's the fuse box. Also, when you want to pull the battery and get all this out the way, once you take this out, you can literally just pull this and the battery just lifts up out of here. Super convenient. USB port right there. Also, your battery tender conveniently is stored right there. You're done with it, just tuck it back up under there. So all of these bikes, the new Scouts, come with forwards. Mids are an option now. What's also interesting is on the Limited Plus Tech models, you get this cluster right here, cruise control, and this button to control the ride command. On the limited models, this button is not here, but the cruise control is, and on the basic model that does not come with cruise control, or this is also going to come with the analog screen, this is also not here. You pretty much just have this. None of the models that we had here had the basic analog set up, so didn't really get a chance to see that. But these risers are also off of the Sport Chief. This plate right here, I'm fairly certain that this is from the Chief. So they've been using parts from different bikes to kind of put this thing together, and honestly, I think it's pretty well done. Like this piece, some people mentioned that this button is kind of redundant. So even though it's here, I think it cleans up the look of this really well, but it does nothing until you actually either turn the key or press the button to turn the bike on, right? Turns the screen on, and then you flip this and it primes the fuel pump to start the bike. So it's an extra step, but if that wasn't there, then you would turn the key, or you just put the power button up here. But like I said, man, it cleans it up. There's not much to think about on this side, and honestly, this took me a little bit of getting used to because these buttons are kind of tiny, but the feedback that you get from the buttons is actually really good. The rectifier is right there, really easy to get to as well. There's a lot of little stuff on this bike, a lot of little stuff. Bye bye. So yeah, they needed that bike. Let me see if I can go get another one. Right, so we're back. I found a Super Scout. Yeah, I stole it. Don't ask no questions. But anyway, what's really cool about this, outside of it being, you know, Super Scout, basically like the Super Chief, just in the Scout format, chrome. These bags, man, they look normal. They're bigger by a little bit than the other Scout bags. You know, that little side bag that you can kind of put a few things in. What's cool about these, man, look at this. It has fit lock. Pull down, lift up, boom. The only downside to those, they don't lock, but it is really cool. This side, pull down, lift up. No, that's super convenient. This paint, yeah, it looks really good. This ride command, yeah, really neat, man. People wanted it, and now it's on here. It's not perfect. It has its moments. There's a weird software thing that's going on with these right now that Indian's working on, where when you hit the power button or turn the key, this takes a bit to kind of do its thing, and then, you know, you hit the button, put it in neutral, and then, you know, you can just start it. So, whoop, I didn't put it in neutral. There we go. Now it's in neutral. And then you hit the button. Yeah. Oh, well, try it again. Yeah, there you go. Yep. So somebody mentioned this, you know, the range right here, 87 miles with a full tank. So what that does, this is based on how the bike is currently being ridden. If you're flogging on it, like most of these bikes have been, it's going to drop the average range down. So imagine like your average range being like 15 miles a gallon or something like that. It's going to change that, but the average miles per gallon on here is 42. So it just depends on, you know, how you're riding the thing. One thing I was also really curious on is what makes Indian, you know, decide that they're going to do ABS rings and not the wheel speed sensor like on Chief. And basically it was just like, that's what they decided on for this platform, and they went with it. It's very similar to Chieftain and Roadmaster. I think Chief is maybe the only one that uses that different style wheel speed sensor where the axle actually goes through it. But I mean, if it works, it works. But what you don't really see too much, you don't see too many cables on this bike. This is the wheel speed sensor cable right here, goes through here, and then that's it right there, and it goes into the harness. But there's not a lot of cable being shown on this thing, and I think it looks really good. This actually is designed a little bit better than the older ones, but this is where it was hooked in when I showed you the tender earlier, like on the 101. So you just kind of tuck that back behind there conveniently. But yeah, there's not a lot of cable being shown. There's the tail end of the clutch cable as it goes under and loops through. But this side of the engine isn't as pretty as the other side, but there is that 1-2 for the radiator, the water pump and all that. Honestly, man, it's not that bad. You know, when you stand away far from it, yeah, it's not too bad. And then you got the sprocket cover. This looks like a carryover part too. That looks like a carryover part. I'm sure these are carryover. It didn't really make sense to redesign any of this. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually used the same belt, kickstand, and shift link, and all of this stuff. It looks pretty much the same. There's a lot of carryover parts on this thing, but when you start looking at things like the frame and, you know, the triples, and I think the forks might actually be the same as well. Well, this piece, the gas tank, actually is different because of that little .1, the air box, the things that you can't really see. It's like all of this is the stuff that's really different, along with the subframe and the bags, and oh yeah, the battery box, that thing's been redesigned as well up under the seat. So there's a lot that's been changed on this bike. It's not just like a, you know, parts being bike. I did ask about, you know, why didn't they go with something like a 240 back here? And basically, Indian has to abide by, obviously, you know, DOT, Department of Transportation, government stuff. Well, there's something called a paddle test that they have to abide by, which basically specifies the amount of clearance that has to be there on that swing arm from factory. And so the sweet spot for them was that 150. But they talked about putting the 240 on there, but it would have involved, on the original Scout as well, changing all of this, and they wanted it to be this way for the accessories that you could put back here. Because again, anything over a 180, you cannot use the subframe. And coming into the new platform, you want to carry over accessories, you want all of this stuff to be able to fit on each other, then you go with this subframe. Now, I know you might say, well, why not just put a 240? Everybody doesn't want a 240. And I honestly think the 200 looks better than the 240, because even though it won't fit with this subframe, it's like, to me, it fits more with the lines of the bike, but that's subjective. But again, being that the swing arm is still the same, if you want to put a 240 back here, you can, but none of this stuff back here is gonna work. It's just not. You're gonna have to change it. Before I forget, the oil level right here, just like the previous generation Scout engine, on this one, the oil change interval is still 10,000 miles. So not only did they make this thing more efficient, but they still were able to keep those 10,000 mile intervals. So after your 500 mile break-in, 9,500 miles do you have to change your oil again. Some people would just change it before then, because 10,000 miles is a good while. I think on Chief and Challenger, I think it's 5,000. I don't remember exactly, but yeah, 10,000 mile oil changes, it's pretty sick. If I had the opportunity, I would love to be able to take this tank off, look at this snorkel. That thing's really in there. I want to take this off, man, and just see how this is designed, knowing what I know now, because I've taken, you know, my Scout apart. I have the entire engine sitting on a stand at home. I'm curious how all of this little stuff is different, because when I got my Scout, it didn't have a tank on it, but, you know, rain got down into the filter, went through the air box, and it was sitting on top of the throttle body right here. So I'm just curious how some of this stuff is designed and how they made it better, because they've iterated on what was already good about this. And the fact that, you know, they're able to get 40,000 miles just for a clearance check shows that they've really thought about some of the things that made Scout good, and they still sought to improve on it. So yeah, I'm just genuinely curious how this thing's put together. And I'm also curious about what parts you can mix and match between Scout and Chief and Chieftain and Challenger, because the ABS toner rings, if I'm not mistaken, are the same part number with Chieftain. And it's just a matter of getting the right rotor, getting the right wheel to accommodate that, because I had planned on my Scout putting a Chief, no, was I gonna put a Chief wheel on it? I think I was gonna put a Chief wheel on it, but the problem was the bolt pattern was different. So I had to go with a Chief thin rotor, because it uses the ABS ring, and everything would have worked out. So it's just one of those things where you kind of have to kind of mix and match. But a lot of these parts intermingle with the other bikes, and as they say, like, it doesn't make sense to redesign that stuff if it's not needed. So that's why you have the Chief risers on here, which are really good. You have the ride command, which is just a software update to make it accommodate Scout, the ECM and everything. The WCM I actually asked was it the same, and they claimed that it's actually different to accommodate Scout. I want to go cross-check the part numbers just to look at that, but yeah, it's got me really excited to take one apart. All right, I went to the dungeon and found an analog Scout. This is a Sports Scout. We also have a key. I'm gonna turn this on. All right. That's what you guys want. So, ABS light blinking, traction control light blinking, traction control. Button up there. You want to change the traction control, turn it on or off. It's off currently. Flick that one time. Turning it on, you hold, press confirm, hold it again. And now you hold it again to see, and it's on. So that is how you do that. But what's interesting about this is the Canadian version. There is no option for power modes. There is no option in here for it. Clear visor. Over here you can see the limited model. There is no button for the ride command stuff because this is the analog version. So if you want this is the one you get. Also, kickstand down there. Actually, no, I think the bike has to be on, so we're gonna start this bike. And put the kickstand down. Side stand. Kickstand up. There you go. You're back in gear. There's your oil light to let you know. Also, if you want to turn the cruise control on, you press that button and it shows up right there down at the bottom. So if you want analog, it is there. So we're going to come over to this one, power it on. It also has an analog screen, but the difference is, see, we have the tinted visor up top and we get greeted by the mode sport. So if you wanted to change this, the same thing. Go through the screen, ride mode, traction control. That's the difference. So if you want to change the ride mode, you cycle through, hold it, sport, standard, rain. I'm gonna go into sport. Let's go into standard. You hold it, and now we've changed it. Go back in there. Cycle back through one more time. Hold it. Yep, standard. Change it. Sport. Hold it. There you go. Yeah, that sucks, man. For that version for Canada. But yeah, the analog version is there if you want it. There's the key. Cut it off. All right. If you can't tell, I'm really curious about how this thing is put together. But I've only had time to really ride it. You can't really take them apart in this setting. So maybe one day I'll get a chance to do that. But riding it, it feels great. And it's just got me more curious to just like find the little hidden stuff, like the new reservoir fill, where the clutch line is being routed, the new little battery post. That little stuff gets me really excited. So anyway, I hope you learned something new about this platform. There's a lot to find out, match part numbers, get into the nitty gritty of this thing. I'm super excited. But anyway, yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.